Is it possible to build your dream home in Brazil for $100,000? And that's including the cost of land? Well, that's what I'm going to investigate in this video. Now, Brazil is a massive country, and the cost of construction and land obviously depends on where you are in Brazil. And in general, the highest cost of land and construction is around Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro. And then in the south, it's a bit cheaper, and then it's even cheaper if you go to the northeast of Brazil. And in this video, I'm going to focus on the south of Brazil, which I'm most familiar with, and in particular Santa Catarina, which I think is a great state. It's relatively affluent, relatively safe as well, and it's got lots of lovely beaches and really nice countryside as well. Okay, so to begin with, the first thing we need is a plot of land to build our home on. Now, if you want a plot of land in the big cities of Florianópolis, Balneário Camboriú, Joinville, and the others, then you're not going to be able to build a house for $100,000. You're going to have to spend a lot more. But if you search for land on the outskirts of these big cities, or in the smaller towns and cities, there you can find land which is a lot more reasonable. So let's have a look at a couple of examples that I found, and I'll leave a link to all the real estate agents selling these plots of land in the description below. So here are some plots of land being sold in an area called Barra do Sai, which is on the coast. So the size of the plots are 360 square meters, which is 3,800 square feet. So they're not the biggest, but you can definitely fit a reasonably sized house on it. And the plots of land are being sold for between 100,000 reais and 200,000 reais. So that's $18,000 to $37,000. And what I would say is that in this area, the beaches are nice, but you find even nicer beaches further south. And yeah, you'll have to spend a bit more money. And here's an example of some plots of land being sold on the coast further south. So this is in Tijucas. And here they're expanding the town a lot, building lots of new neighborhoods. And this new neighborhood you're looking at here is called Flores de Sal. And here you can buy plots of land which are 250 square meters, which is 2,700 square feet. And the price is 280,000 reais, which is $52,000. Now, the neighborhood isn't right next to the beach, so you would have to drive for, a couple of minutes to get to the beach. And also, the town of Tijucas is quite small. It's nothing too special. But the good thing about Tijucas is that in the surrounding area, there's lots of really nice beaches. And also, Tijucas is just an hour's drive from Florianópolis, which is the capital of Santa Catarina. So you're pretty close to a very big city. Okay, and then one final area along the coast, which is even further south, is Laguna. And Laguna also has really nice beaches, and they're building a new neighborhood here called Praia do Sol. And here you can buy plots of land which are 360 square meters, so 3,800 square feet. And the prices are from 130,000 reais, which is $24,000. So you can see you can get plots of land near the coast, near some nice beaches, which are an okay size, for, between $20,000 and $30,000. But a couple of things to note are that, in general, these smaller towns and cities on the coast, they can be a bit simpler in terms of infrastructure and so on. Also, they get very busy in summertime with lots of tourists invading the area. And finally, you need to investigate the risk of flooding as well with rising sea levels. So another option, which I personally prefer, is that you buy a plot of land near a city or town in the countryside, which is like an hour's drive from the coast or something, because then you can still enjoy the beaches by driving there, but then you can also enjoy the countryside, and in general the prices are lower here. So just to give you a few examples, I found some plots of land on the outskirts of the city of Blumenau, which is a big city in the countryside. It's about an hour's drive from the coast. So here you can buy a plot of land which is 250 square meters, so 2,700 square feet, for 180,000 reais, which is $33,000. And I really like Blumenau. I think it's a beautiful city. It's got a lot of German influence. It looks a bit like a city in Germany, and it's relatively safe and also pretty affluent. But if you're willing to live in a smaller town, then you can get even more for your money. So just to give you an example, so this land here is 2 hectares. It's near the small town of Angelina, and it's being sold for 190,000 reais, which is $35,000. And as you can see, they've already kind of leveled part of the land, and it already has electricity and internet, and there's a natural spring there and a river running through it as well. So I think you can get water from those. And the area is very beautiful, just surrounded by forests. And also it's about an hour and 30-minute drive to the city of Florianópolis. Okay, so those were just a couple of examples of the plot of land that you can buy in Santa Catarina on the coast or a bit away from the coast. Obviously, if you were to go even further west, even further away from the coast, then the land becomes even cheaper. Okay, so now let's assume you found a plot of land, so now let's have a look at the cost of building a house. So the first thing you should do is that you should go onto the website Sinduscon. And on this website, they show you the average cost of construction in most states in Brazil. So if we go to the Sinduscon website for Santa Catarina, and the report that you want is the CUB per square meter, or as Brazilians say, cubi. And here they show you the average cost of building a house per square meter. And here they've got 5 tables. We're just interested in the first 3 tables, which is residential properties. And then the difference between these 3 tables is the quality or the spec of the homes. The table on the left is padrão baixo, which is kind of the lowest spec, so a simpler home. Then you've got medium spec, and then on the right is the high spec or the luxury home. And then the row you should look at is R1, which is a residential home for a single family. And you can see the cost ranges from 2,718 reais per square meter for a low spec house to 3,963 reais for a high spec house. So in dollars, that is $506 per square meter up to $736 per square meter. And if we just compare that to the cost of construction in other countries, so in Sweden, the cost of constructing a home is 30,000 Swedish krona per square meter, which is $3,196 per square meter. In the US, they say it's around $180 to $450 per square foot. So if you choose kind of the middle, so $300 per square foot, that would equate into $3,299 per square meter. So you can see the cost of construction is significantly higher in those countries compared to Brazil. And you're probably asking, why is it so much cheaper in Brazil? Well, one reason is that the cost of labor is significantly lower in Brazil compared to those countries. But that isn't the whole explanation. It also comes down to how the houses are built. So in Brazil, a large proportion of houses are built out of bricks, but the bricks are hollow bricks, quite large ones. And then they put in pillars or columns and beams made out of concrete to give the structure strength. And in terms of finishing, and usually they just put cement render on the walls on the inside and the outside, and then just paint it. And the foundations are usually concrete, and then they just put tiles on top of that. The roof is either tiles or metal sheeting, and then the ceiling is usually concrete as well. Sometimes they put plaster on the ceiling, but a lot of the time it's just concrete and cement to render again. So yeah, in general, the houses don't have any insulation in the walls or in the roof. The windows are usually single glazing. There's no central heating or central air conditioning. It's usually just individual air conditioning units in the rooms. So in general, the houses are constructed to a simpler spec compared to Sweden and the US and other countries. Okay, so then let's calculate how much it would cost to build a brick house here in Santa Catarina. So let's just choose the middle column, which is normal spec. And so that was 3,257 reais per square meters. And then times it by the size of your house. So let's just say 150 square meter house. So that would be 488,000 reais, which is $90,000. So for $90,000, you'd be able to build a 150 square meter house. And this cost includes all the materials, so the cement, the bricks, the wood, the tiles for the roof, all the plumbing and electrics, the windows, the doors, the tiles for the floor and the bathroom, and all the cost of labor as well. But there are certain additional costs that you need to add on to get to the final cost of building this house. So the costs that aren't included here are the cost of doing the foundation of a house, because apparently that changes a lot depending on the type of soil. Also, it doesn't include building a fence or a wall around the house. Also, it doesn't include the cost of an engineer or an architect, because that can fluctuate a lot. And then there are also taxes and local government fees as well, which again aren't included. So I did a bit of quick research. I mean, these are just approximate numbers, but I put 40,000 reais for foundation, 20,000 reais to build a wall or a fence and a gate, 20,000 reais to pay an engineer or architect, and 30,000 reais to pay the taxes and the fees as well. So if you add these costs as well, the total cost comes to 598,000 reais, which is $111,000. Obviously, this number is just an approximation, because Sinduscon just gives you an average cost per square meter for the whole state. It will vary a bit depending on where you are in the state. And also, if you want to improve the house further, double glazing, a central air conditioning, a swimming pool, then the cost is going to go up even further. But just to give you an approximation, so just for over $100,000, you could build a 150 square meter brick property, and then also you need to buy the plot of land, which we saw was between $20,000 and $40,000. So in total, we're looking around $150,000. So yeah, it'd be a big challenge to build this house for under $100,000. But there is another option which could reduce down the cost of building a property, and that is building a prefabricated timber house. Now, as a Swede, I love timber houses. I've lived in timber houses most of my life, and I think they're great. But here in Brazil, there is a bit of negativity towards timber houses. So speaking to some Brazilians, they say that timber houses, they're not as strong as brick houses. They can have more problems in terms of termites and dealing with the humid climate as well, more maintenance and higher fire risk as well. So yeah, the impression I get is that Brazilians, they kind of prefer brick houses to timber houses in general, that is. But I love timber houses. I live in one here in Brazil. I've had no problems. I mean, the key is to build a house out of good quality wood. So the cheapest wood is eucalyptus and pine, and they're less resistant, you can have more termite problems and so on. But if you choose other woods like cedrinho, garapera, itaúba, grappia, or at least choose eucalyptus or pine that has been treated well, then you shouldn't have many problems. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. So the first one is very simple and very small, just to show you what you can get for not that much money. So this is just 60 square meters, so 650 square feet. So it's got a living room and kitchen, 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. This is made of treated eucalyptus wood, so relatively simple wood, and the walls are stud walls, apart from in the kitchen and in the bathroom where the walls are brick, because when they need to put tiles on the walls, but the rest of them are just wooden stud walls. And yeah, it's a simple house. I mean, I personally don't like the contrast between the white tiles and the wooden walls. But yeah, it's a simple house. And in terms of cost, so I couldn't find the cost from this company for this particular house. But in general, the cost of a house is around 1,000 reais per square meter, just for the materials. So that would be then 60,000 reais for a house like this, more or less. I'll show you some specific prices a bit later. But they have other styles as well, and larger houses as well. So this one just over 80 square meters, 860 square feet. It's got open plan living room and kitchen, and then 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. You can see here they put in plasterboards rather than the wooden walls, which I personally think looks really nice. I mean, it's still a relatively small house, and the house is made out of a wood called itaúba, and this is a hardwood, which is a lot more resistant. But it's still a relatively small house, but I just want to show you a different style. But then you can get bigger prefabricated houses, which are 100, 150, 200 square meters. And like I said, there are loads of companies selling these houses, but most of them, they don't post their prices online. You have to book a meeting with them, and only then do they pass the prices. But I found this company here that show their prices. So here you can see you can get a 98 square meter house for 87,000 reais. That's just for the materials. A bit later I'll talk about the cost of labor. And here they've got another wooden house which is 167 square meters, and the price of that is 158,000 reais. Now I believe all the properties here are built out of treated pine, which is okay. I mean, I prefer another type of wood, but just to give you a sense of the prices. And then obviously you can build a more custom wooden house. So I found this one here, which I really liked. So this is 200 square meters. So it's got a big living room and kitchen, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and I think it looks really nice. Look at the high ceilings here. Yeah, so I really like this one. And the wood they've used is grappia, which is a hardwood, which is very resistant. But a house like this, which is more custom made, is going to cost more. Let's just say we choose that house, which is 167 square meters, which was 158,000 reais. So that there is just for the materials. That doesn't include the labor or the foundation or the walls or the taxes. So we need to add all of that on. So the cost of labor, that's going to fluctuate a lot. But just having a bit of research, it should be around 700 to 1,000 reais per square meter in order to build a wooden house. So let's say it's 1,000 reais per square meter, so that would be 150,000 reais to build a wooden house. Then we need to add a cost of foundation, so let's say 40,000, just like the brick house. Then 20,000 for a fence, a wall, and the gate. And then taxes and fees, so say 20,000 for that, because the property doesn't cost as much and you're spending less on labor and so on, the fees should be lower here. So if you add all of that together, that would be 605,000 reais, which is $112,000. Now, with a lot of these companies that sell wooden houses, they also offer a construction service so that you can build a house for you for an extra cost, or you can just employ a builder and a carpenter to build a house. And probably the second option is probably the cheapest. So you can see if you go for a prefabricated wooden house, then it is possible to buy land and construct a house for around $100,000. Obviously, if you want the house to be made out of a different type of wood, a more resistant hardwood, then it's going to cost more. And if you want the fixtures and fittings to be nicer, again, the price would go up. But just to mention again, what I mentioned earlier is that there is a bit of negative attitude towards timber houses here in Brazil. So you might have problems selling the property in the future. And also it's worth mentioning that it's more difficult to get mortgages as well on wooden houses here in Brazil. So you need to weigh all of these factors to see whether it's worth building a cheaper wooden house, but you might have problems in the future, or spending more and building a brick house. I mean, I personally prefer living in wooden houses because I feel these wooden houses deal better with the climate here in the south of Brazil, which can be very hot or quite cold, so it can fluctuate quite a lot, and it's pretty humid as well. And I just feel the wooden houses deal with that better than the brick houses, which just have walls made out of one brick. So brick walls can get very humid on the inside and very damp. And also if the sun shines on the brick walls, they can get very hot, which heats up the house on the inside, and in the winter it can get very cold. But that's just my own personal opinion. And also it's worth mentioning that steel frame houses are starting slowly to appear here in Brazil as well. So that is another option, but it's still a bit limited in the number of companies that provide it. So I hope you like this video. Please leave a like, subscribe. If you've got any questions or anything, leave in the commentary below. So thanks for watching. Until next time.